1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to Tell Me More, the podcast that tests their smoke alarms monthly, replaces their batteries twice a year, and replaces the alarm every 10 years. I'm host Autumn Hume from the city's communications team, and today we're talking about fire, specifically fire prevention and safety. We are nearly 40 episodes into this podcast, and yet somehow we've neglected to talk to anybody from the fire department. As you may guess, fire protection is a big thing that cities and municipalities do, but it's not just about the protection. Prevention is the preferred option. So today joining me is Ted Posadowski, Kingston Fire Rescue's Chief Fire Prevention Officer, and Fire Inspector Richard Vasko, or Rick. These guys have a lot of knowledge, and it's great to have you debut here today. So thank you for joining me. So I'm going to start it off. If you could tell me about fire prevention and the role at Kingston Fire Rescue, where does that fit into the department? What does fire prevention mean? What does it do?
So first off, thanks for having us, Autumn.
Yeah, no problem.
Give us the opportunity to talk about fire prevention. With regards to your intro and the 3 lines of defense, and prevention's a big part of that. So the first line of defense is public education, which we are quite active in the community. The second is inspections or enforcement. And then, unfortunately, if those 2 happen to fail, let's say, and it would be suppression or the firefighters, right? So,
Right.
Of course, we want to be proactive instead of reactive. So I guess the roles and responsibilities that we have within the community are we do public education, and that includes schools. You can see we have Fire Prevention Week coming up here shortly.
It's in October, right?
Yep. And then we could be at weekend events.
Right.
Try to involve ourselves in the community, as well as inspections. And what we are trying to do with inspections is trying to be proactive. So we recently were accredited in 2022, and we've identified our high-risk buildings and where the fires are occurring are in residential. So the inspectors, since they've started kind of like 2021, 22, have done over, I think, like 200, around 200 inspections. And which is really interesting is we're constantly doing analytics, and we're reviewing as part of accreditation, right? We want to review is our programs working?
Right.
And one of the interesting things that we're noticing is the result of those proactive inspections, it has actually reduced incidents to those buildings.
So, just to sort of wrap my head around this. So we've got data showing where fires are happening most frequently, are happening in residential buildings. We're sending out inspectors to look at what's causing these fires, what's making problems, and we're seeing a decline in that?
Yes, and actually we're receiving, seeing a call, like reduced medical calls, like everything, right? We were kind of more focused on the reducing fires and false alarms and such, but it's a minor reduction, but we're seeing, which is a positive, right? And being proactive, and you throw those 3 lines of defense in the mix, and you have that public education. And what we're also trying to do is when we inspect the buildings, we would try to follow up with some sort of public education.
Right.
So I know everyone has a busy schedule. We would try to a schedule, kind of a one-on-one, or like a meeting in a boardroom. But if that wasn't convenient, we'd also put like posters up or send them links to our self-inspection. So we would just try whatever we could to, on top of the inspection, we would try to educate the owners, the rent. Yeah.
Right. So identifying sort of risky areas and then going to them and working with them to mitigate those risks, teach them, educate people on how to reduce their risk in those circumstances?
Yeah, and a lot of fires are, and Rick was, before becoming a fire inspector, Rick was a career full-time captain at Station 7. So Rick can probably speak more about this than myself, but a lot of the fires are preventable, right?
Yes, most certainly they're preventable. And so the one thing that I've had experience with is over my first 23 years in the fire service, in my career fire service, I was on the last line of defense.
What's that?
Well, the three lines of defense being public education and the, compliance and then suppression.
Right.
As Ted mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to be on the last line. And now, and it's important. I mean, of course, we have to have somebody there to put the fires and respond in an emergency.
For sure.
But now I'm on the other side of things, and I'm seeing the challenges that we're facing with getting compliance, and actually most of it has to do with the education piece.
So it's like a knowledge gap primarily.
I would say that a contributing factor is knowledge gap. When we go into these proactive inspections, I'm finding that we have to educate not only the tenants in some of these buildings, but the owners themselves. We offer suggestions, and we ensure that the building is compliant with the fire code, and we correct any deficiencies that we find. And I mean, let's face it, a building that's a little older, we may find some things that aren't up to par, so we correct them and we bring that to the owner's attention. So I do really see and value the especially the education piece, because it is the front line. And I mean, let's face it, if people know the right behaviors, fire safety behaviors, and the right things to do as far as fire safety is concerned, then we don't have to go to the second line or the third line.
Right.
So I guess in a perfect world is if we were all educated well and did the right thing, then we wouldn't have to respond to fires. But I mean, accidents still happen and people make mistakes. So our job is to kind of nip it, sort of, so to speak, before it comes a problem. And that's where I think we've been seeing the positive results in the analytics that Ted was mentioning.
When you go into do one of these inspections, what types of things are you looking for predominantly? Is it just smoke alarms, or are there big ticket items that sort of stand out more frequently that you run across?
So there's various items that we're looking for. We're making sure that owners are maintaining their life safety equipment. So, for early detection, that could be a fire alarm system, could be a sprinkler system. We're reviewing, fire extinguishers, emergency lighting, exit signs. We're making sure fire separations, if they're damaged, that are corrected. Reviewing exiting, reviewing their fire safety plan. Just make sure that there's compliance with the fire code, and if we do find violations, we issue an inspection order and work with the owner to get those items corrected. So,
what do you find often? What's the most what is the most frequent issue that you find, or is there one?
And Rick can probably speak more to this, is one of the programs that has been really, I don't know the word to use, but is the short-term rentals. For us, has been a great opportunity for us to get out in the community, and what we're finding, and I'll pass it over to Rick here, but is like smoke and CO alarm issues out there.
Yeah, for sure. So the city of Kingston, I want to say since 2021 or thereabouts, have been promoting the short-term rental and the licensing of the short-term rentals. So, for instance, your Airbnb, that sort of thing. And one of the items on the application list is that Kingston Fire and Rescue will go and do a fire inspection.
Right.
And, the application, when we receive the application, there's check boxes that say, are your smoke alarms in operating order? Are they within the manufacturer's replacement date? Have you been testing them regularly? And there's a checkbox that says yes. And quite often we will see that there's brand new smoke alarms in the building, which is a good thing.
That is.
So one would think, okay, the smoke alarms have been replaced, so therefore, why would we still go and inspect? So since 2021, and I would say each inspector gets a handful of these short-term rentals a month, maybe more, and every single short-term rental application that I have inspected, I have only found 3 of them with compliant smoke alarms.
Oh, wow.
So it's not that the owner or the applicant is trying to do anything wrong. What has happened is, we talked about knowledge before, is they're a little bit, the knowledge is still a little bit lacking with respect to smoke alarms. And, every year you can drive around many cities and you'll see the posters, smoke alarms save lives.
A little Sparky on it.
Yep, Sparky's on it. Test your smoke alarms. Every municipality has a smoke alarm program of some sort. But what happens is, and I'll give you an example of one in particular, one short-term rental. There was probably 7 or 8 smoke alarms and CO alarms combination within the unit, and they had all been replaced within the last year.
Okay, sounding good.
Sounds great. So I go in and inspect, and I look up at the smoke alarm, and it's shiny, it's brand new, and I look under the base of it, because the base, the thing that screws into the ceiling, and I look under the base of it, and I see a bunch of wires.
Oh no.
So what the owner did is he replaced a hard-wired smoke alarm with a battery-powered one.
Okay.
And when you're replacing smoke alarms, you have to replace like for like.
Right.
So a hardwired, which is connected right into the building electrical system, especially in a newer building, they are interconnected so that when one smoke alarm goes off, they all go off. So in this particular building, that was the intention. So in other words, if you were in the basement, or if there was smoke in the basement and you were sleeping on the second floor, you don't have to wait for the smoke to get up to the second floor for you to be alerted. What happens is the smoke alarm in the basement will activate, and all the smoke alarms in the house will all activate at the same time. So in other words, early detection, early warning saves lives. That's the message that we were trying to get out there.
Yeah.
So I notify the owner that, okay, you've replaced all the smoke alarms in the house with battery-powered smoke alarms. And I said, it's okay, I'll give you, how about a week before you can get them all replaced? So when I put the smoke alarm back up, I went to test the smoke alarm, and it didn't operate. Brand new smoke alarm, but it didn't operate. So when I looked into the battery compartment of there was batteries in it, but the batteries were put in backwards.
Oh no.
So
this is the test part of it.
So that's why we always say too, is when you are replacing a smoke alarm, whether it's interconnected electrical or battery powered, you put it back up into its base, but you always test it afterwards to make sure that it's operating. So that's just one good example of why we still go into these short-term rental applications to do the inspections. And we're also seeing a lot of people don't realize that there is a manufacture date on the back of your smoke alarm. And a smoke alarm typically expires and requires replacement according to the manufacturer's instructions, usually about 10 years.
Right.
So if there's no replacement date on the side of the smoke alarm, which some of the new smoke alarms have.
That's handy.
Yeah, it's very handy. You do have the manufacturer date on the bottom of the smoke alarm. So test your smoke alarms regularly. If they're battery powered, change the batteries at least once a year, preferably twice a year. And the best thing to do is spring ahead and fall back. So when the time changes in the spring, change your batteries. When it changes in the fall, change your batteries, and test your smoke alarms at least monthly. And when you're replacing, like for like, and they really do save lives. I can't stress enough on the importance of the early warning. They're amazing pieces of equipment, and they really do save lives.
If the batteries are installed correctly.
Yes, correct.
And just to go back with the short-term rentals and the decrease in fires that we're seeing. So just some of the numbers, and Rick indicated around 2021, right? So Kingston Fire and Rescue received about 267 applications, which led to 399 inspections. Next year, 381 applications, which led to 602 inspections. And then then the following year, we have 404 applications, which led to 557 inspections. So
in some cases, you're going back and re-inspecting,
we
right?
do. We
okay.
sometimes have to go back on multiple occasions, and that's fine, right? But what we're seeing, and if the numbers... When I say fires, I'm saying we call working fires, and that's I guess that wouldn't be you'd see in the
industry
media.
Term, right?
You'd see in the media. You'd have a multi-truck response, right? And prior to the pandemic, and keep in mind too, at the City of Kingston, our population has increased
quite a bit in the last little while, and it's supposed to keep going.
Yes. So we're seeing an increase in fires, but let's just go back to prior to the pandemic. We're probably around 26, 27, 28 of those working structure fires a year. Well, at the peak of the pandemic, we actually hit around 42. But the positive is that we've actually we're down. I think we've seen a 10.8% decrease since. So we're trending down, but we're also contributing. We're doing public educations, but I believe. The short-term rentals probably had an effect. A lot of times, I guess we are seeing when we look at the analytics, there's a decrease, right? But a lot of times we don't see that, and especially in prevention, that if we've saved a life or lives, right? But the short-term rentals have been great for us.
When you think it's hard to count the fires that don't happen or the property that's not damaged.
No, for sure. So those four, just take last year, 404 buildings that we wouldn't have probably went into if it wasn't for those short-term rentals.
Right.
So it's
that's
been great.
Really interesting. And just a thought, as you mentioned the pandemic, I'm wondering, there's been a bunch of very sort of specific changes that happened in different fields due to the pandemic. I'm wondering if part of that fire increase, you think it was because people were home more, no idea?
I think, it can be.
Yeah, I think with the pandemic, and I've used this analogy a few times. I think with the pandemic, over a course of a few years, people sort of rediscovered their own backyards and their own homes.
Right, yeah.
So they spend more time in there. So with people say cocooning in their own home, you see more of an increase in things like candles, maybe more fires burning in the fireplace.
Right.
Can I say people being more creative?
Yes,
which has led to
people being more creative.
Fire hazards?
Yes, people being more creative, and I think all of that is contributory.
Makes sense, yeah.
What we find also too, April, is drugs and alcohol are also contributed to fires sometimes, right? So they could be under the influence and not making those, those smart choices. And you look at what are the common causes of what we see here in the City of Kingston, and I think throughout the country and throughout the world, is unattended cooking, right? So you see the scenario where somebody's went out for some drinks, they come back, they're hungry, they put the fries in the oil, but they fall asleep on the couch, right? And they, to their smoke alarms going off, or unfortunately, the smell of smoke. But what we've seen actually kind of this year is discarded cigarettes seem to be just slightly surpassed it,
Right.
Not by much, and those fires are so preventable.
Yeah.
And it's actually, we had a fire, time flies for me, but let's say within the last year or two, where an individual discarded a cigarette, which spread to 3 houses.
I think I remember that one. Yeah.
And over $1 million worth of damage. Luckily, no one was hurt, but just a simple discarded cigarette
Caused that much damage.
Yeah, and so we've
Displaced people and
right. So it's unfortunate, but it's preventable.
Well, and then the comment on the impaired, I mean, any activity you do that has any risk, the risk goes up if you're impaired. So it's something like cooking, people probably say that, it's a low risk, but there's always risk to that. And then you add in drugs or alcohol
or even being like on electronic devices.
Yeah.
You don't even need to be like under the influence of drugs and alcohol.
Just distracted.
You can easily get, like on your phone, you get a call, you get a text, you see an advertisement on your phone, and then next thing you know, your smoke alarms are going off,
flaming.
right? So it's distractions too. So
focus on cooking if you're cooking.
yes, agreed.
Can I put my fire captain's helmet on for a second?
For sure.
So I have actually witnessed on several occasions grease fires at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And I know one of our recently retired fire inspectors would always put on the bottom of her emails, alcohol and cooking don't mix. Something to that effect. And I actually have witnessed at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody comes home and either they're extremely tired or have had a couple of drinks and will put a bit of it could be, cooking a couple of sausages in a frying pan, or more typically would be, put some oil in a frying pan and I'll cook some onion rings or French fries and I'll have a little snack while I'm watching and winding down before I go to bed. And then the next thing you know, the person has fallen asleep on the stove, and they can be deadly.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're under the influence. So, if you come home and you do need something to eat, maybe put something in a microwave, or because you usually have to put a time on it.
Yeah.
And the microwave stops. So cooking and alcohol really don't mix. So be on the lookout for that.
Maybe save the drinks for after you've made the meal, and then put your cigarette butts out in an ashtray properly. Yeah.
I agree.
It's amazing how simple things can have such a huge impact.
And we're and one of the roles that we do in fire prevention is investigations. Right. So we have the opportunity to do public education. We actually, we have the opportunity to do inspections, but then we actually
you come onto these scenes while they're still sort of cooling down in some cases, hey?
So we want to determine what caused that fire, right? So maybe we can develop public education messaging based on that. So we are always. You get back to the analytics. What are causing fires, right? What areas of the city are those? Are they happening, right? Is the messaging? We're comparing where we're doing our public education events, and we're always looking at. So we're very fortunate. Obviously, unfortunate there was a fire, but we get the opportunity to do that investigation, try to find the cause of the fire so that we can prevent. And that can even be like recalls on like a dishwasher or a stove, right?
We've seen sort of, e-bikes and mobility items like that have been sort of a huge thing and a great benefit for many people, but also some of them are made to less quality standards, and you're seeing fire departments sort of ringing the bell on some of those concerns.
Yes, so you've sort of...
tangenting here.
No, you sort of touched on it, and it just, a light bulb went on my head. One of the things that we are seeing an increase in is lithium battery fires. And it usually has to do with charging equipment.
Right.
And you should only recharge your cell phone or any type of battery with the charging device that came with it. So what we find happens is, you have to plug in a phone every day, or if there's other things that you're using, you may have to plug them in daily. And then the next thing you know, the wire on the charger has frayed, or the receptacle doesn't quite fit as well anymore in the device. And the first thing you do is you go online and you would order another charger.
Maybe the cheapest one you can get?
Possibly, and the cheapest one may not be CSA approved. It may come offshore and has not been manufactured for that particular device, and may not have the same charging specs on it,
right.
The capabilities, and the next thing you know, you have an overcharge situation, overcurrent, and lithium batteries, they're safe,
yep.
provided you use them and you charge them correctly. And the other thing that Ted sort of touched on earlier too was there was a smoking incident that possibly caught 3 homes on fire. The other thing that we see a lot of, and you could probably attest to, Ted, is fires that start outside the home from the deck area.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of people now trying to be conscious with and proper with smoking and not
right.
endangering other people with secondhand smoke. You see a lot of people going out on their decks
yep.
to smoke. And they will have a receptacle there. It may have sand in it. It may just be a metal pot. And everybody thinks that, okay, that's safe. Well, especially in the winter months or the colder weather, you go outside, you stick as close to the door as possible, you smoke, and you put your butt in the receptacle. Well, the receptacle fills up. And quite often you can see the buildup of cigarette butts, and then the next thing you know, there's heat from a cigarette, and it catches fire, and then there's a bit of flame, and then it goes to the vinyl siding of the home,
right.
and the fire has only one place to go, and that's up, and it goes into the soffit of the eaves, and the next thing you know, the whole attic is on fire, and the whole building is on fire from a fire that started out on a deck.
And especially with the construction of these new buildings now.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with this, the fire that we're bringing up with the 3 houses. Like everything is just lightweight construction, vinyl siding, and that stuff.
Moves fast.
Moves very fast.
Yeah.
Right? And you think of our response time for the crews. They get there, well, I guess maybe Rick can elaborate on this more, but I think like the trucks would probably, in our urban, like probably within 2 to 3 minutes, probably.
We're quick.
Like they're showing up on scene, and sometimes the houses are fully involved already, right? And so it's scary.
3 minutes. That's about 90 seconds then to go from a smoldering butt to potentially the house is on fire.
Yep.
So on that point, there is a fantastic video online. I believe you can still get it. Unfortunately, the video was made because of the result of a fatality. A young boy died in a fire, and there's several versions of the video. There's a 3 or 4 minute version, and that one pretty well gets the point across. It's called "No Time to Spare," I think it's called, and it goes through the because of this fatality. The fire marshal's office tried to reconstruct the exact particulars of what took place and the development of the fire.
Okay.
So back
built a room?
So what had happened is this fire was in a semi-detached home.
Okay.
And the one side of the home was completely consumed by the fire. The other home on the other side wasn't affected by the fire. So this was back in the days when you only needed a smoke alarm on the levels of the home that contained a bedroom. Okay. And they were trying to determine if we had smoke alarms on every level of the home, would the people in the home, would they have been alerted quick enough to leave the building safely and save a life.
Right.
So it's really good to watch. They have a whole bunch of meters, and they have a video there, and they show the fire from its initial incipient stage, what we call it, to the growth stage, to the fully developed, to the flashover stage, and then the decay stage. And there's a clock. And what they did in this particular home is they did put a smoke alarm on the ground floor. It was a two-story home.
Right.
And they put a smoke alarm on the ground floor, and you could hear, and the fire was initially on the ground floor.
Right.
And you can hear the smoke alarm going off on the ground floor, and then there's a time delay for the smoke to get up to the second floor where the people were sleeping and alert them.
Right.
And from watching the smoke development and the flame development, it was very clear that had there been smoke alarms on every level of the home, the family, every member of the family would have been alerted in time, and they would have been able to exit the building. And as a result of that one fire and the research that was done by the fires, so Ted was speaking earlier about, we try to get the cause and determination. Well, we're trying to prevent again, right? Our goal is, our sole purpose in life is to prevent the fires, and if we can't prevent them, at least get life safety systems in place so that it will help people evacuate in a timely fashion. And as a result of the research that was done and the testing done on this particular fire, right after that, the fire marshal mandated that every level of the home has to have smoke alarms.
Regardless of bedrooms.
Regardless of bedrooms.
That's incredible. There's an expression I've heard before in relation to the building code that everything you see in the building code is written in blood, because it's there because there's been a problem that has resulted in death or injury. And I think it's got to be the same for every tip you present for fire prevention, every program you bring forward, it's there because something has happened, and this has been a response to try and prevent that from happening again. That's sort of what I'm hearing from this.
Yeah, so exactly, like the fire code too as well. And another example of that is retirement home and care facilities. We've, let's go back, I think 2014, but don't quote me on that. But there were some large losses in those types of those buildings, facilities, which led to Section 9.7 in the fire code. So requiring sprinklers. I think we have about 65 of retirement home care facilities in the city of Kingston.
Wow, okay.
So those buildings are inspected annually. As well as we complete it's kind of like a timed egress drill, right?
Right.
So we just want to make sure that the staff are trained and they know their fire safety plan. And the timed egress drill, what that entails is the inspectors are there. And there's kind of two times that they have to hit. And the first time is they simulate kind of a fire in one of the suites.
Oh, okay.
Right? So they, fire alarm system's activated. So that first time is for the staff, the supervisory staff, to respond to that room.
Yep.
And remove the individual and shut the door.
Right.
That's time number one. And then the second time is...
And that slows the progression of the fire then?
Yeah. And especially in a building that's sprinklered.
Right.
Right? That... definitely. And you got to have a fire rated door there. So in theory, that fire should, be extinguished, and maybe some little bit of smoke maybe comes out into the corridor. But the fire stays in there. And then the next step is getting the rest of the individuals within that fire compartment or in that area, right? And we bring them to the other set of double doors or that other separation, right? And those are the two times that we monitor. So that's done annually. Like I said, around 65 buildings, and we're quite active.
Wow.
As well as we just started doing this year is also providing public education to individuals in those types of buildings.
Right.
And actually yesterday, one of the inspectors was just down the road at a retirement home, so kind of doing an older and wiser program, just on like cooking safety, extension cords, like general fire safety, but also what to do when a fire happens. And we went over that timed egress drill. So we did the public education, and then we followed with the timed egress drill, and we did the inspection kind of all in one day. So it was good and well received.
That's really good to hear. And I feel like, you're always learning more about how fires are starting, how to prevent them, steps people can take. The advice that I got as a kid has changed over my lifetime. Like, we could always learn more, always get a refresher on this. I want to talk about, we've talked a lot about smoke alarms, but I want to talk specifically about a program that you guys have to help support homeowners in making sure that they've got current smoke alarms. So I think you'd mentioned 10 years after manufacture, they need to be replaced typically. Could you tell me a bit about this program that you've got running?
Yeah, so we're going to focus additionally on carbon monoxide alarms too,
okay,
right?
Yeah,
So there's generally carbon monoxide alarms need to be replaced every 7 years. So we've worked with our planning department, building department, as well as like our GIS and information systems.
Right.
They developed a nice app for us. And sorry, I can't forget to include corporate communications yourself, Autumn. You're a big part of this because you helped us develop the public education material, and I'll get to that. So sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
So it's going to be launched during Fire Prevention Week, and Fire Prevention Week is October 6th through 12th. And our goal of this program is to notify owners, and you go back to the smoke alarms need to be replaced every 10, and your CO7 is that you at the 8-year mark and the 9-year marks and 10-year mark, you're going to get some information on. You're going to get a warning. So you'll get something from Kingston Fire and Rescue at 8 years, just kind of giving the heads up. Because
it's a postcard, right?
It's a postcard. But what people, I don't know if they realize, and Rick maybe able to elaborate on this, but some of the new homes now have smoke alarms. They're in the bedroom too, and they're strobes. So depending on the size of your house, you could probably be up to $500 or $1,000 replacing smoke and CO alarms in there, right?
That's not nothing.
So yeah, it's expensive, right? But it will save your life. But the goal is to try to get it before the 10, and in theory, hopefully have homeowners budget.
Yep.
Just a reminder that at the 8-year mark and 9-year mark, that at that 10-year, so you're going to get one at 8, you're going to get a postcard at 9, and then it's kind of, you're going to get that one at 10, in the hopes of letting people know that they need to change their smoke and CO alarms.
Start putting money in the bank.
So, just to expand on the newer smoke alarms and CO alarms with the strobes, they have an internal clock. And I've seen this when I was on the fire trucks, that let's say in October 2020 you moved into your home. And let's say the builder installed the smoke alarms in September. And when they activate the smoke alarms, the clock starts ticking. And 10 years from that date, and I've seen them, it's almost to the date, it's incredible, these smoke alarms will start chirping every 30 seconds to let you know that the smoke alarm needs replacement.
That's a noise you can't escape.
Well, it's a noise you can't escape, and if you have 10 smoke alarms in the home, and these strobes aren't cheap, these strobe smoke alarms aren't as cheap as the other smoke alarms. I think what Ted is getting is with this program warning you a couple of years in advance, then you might be able to replace 1 or 2 a year, and then you're not faced with 10 smoke alarms that have to all be replaced at the same day. But they do have an internal clock, and they will all start chirping within a couple of days of each other, and it is an annoyance.
And they always start chirping at 2 a.m.
Of course.
That's what we always hear. It's not when you get home from work or having lunch. It's always 2 a.m.
No,
So,
there's honestly nothing worse than a noise like that. Like
yeah,
just a little
but it's a
buzzing
noise that obviously could save your life. So it's really important to us, this program. And for any house that we miss or aren't in that, that 8 or 9 or 10 years, what we're going to include is on your property tax. So you'll get like a little messaging in there.
Okay, yeah.
Just, maintain your smoke alarms, because we do have a false alarm bylaw too. Right, and there's some misconceptions out there, and what we see too is just people not maintaining their smoke alarms, and then the smoke alarm goes off, or it's past the manufacturer's date, right, which leads to they think something's wrong, and we're finding that it's not maintained, right.
Yeah.
So
it's triggering these false alarms then because it's an old or
and our number
expired.
one response is false alarms.
Jeez. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So the last thing we want is fire trucks to be tied up at a false alarm, which could have been avoided, and somebody down the street's having a heart attack where a truck from a farther station has to come and respond. Right.
Yeah.
So, and the false alarm bylaw gives us another, opportunity to provide some public education. And to homeowners.
But hopefully it doesn't go that far and they get the opportunity to update before.
Can I talk a little bit about carbon monoxide?
Please.
You can.
Okay. So we've been focusing an awful lot on smoke alarms, and we have touched on carbon monoxide. So I'm going to tell you a little story, and this is when I was captain. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and a gentleman knocked on the door of the fire hall, and he had a carbon monoxide alarm in his hand. And he said, "Where can I go to get a replacement?" And I said, "Well, how old is it?" And he said, "Oh, it's only a couple of years old." And I said, "Why does it need replacement?" He says, "It's defective." And I said, "Well, how do you know it's defective?" And this was about noon hour. He says, "Well, it's been going off since 1 o'clock in the morning." So I said, "What is your address?" So we went over to the gentleman's address, and we went in there with our carbon monoxide meter, and we had 200 parts per million of carbon monoxide in the home, which was fairly high.
Right.
And
so the detector was working.
So the detector, the smoke alarm, or excuse me, the carbon monoxide alarm, was working. So I thought at that point in time, okay, we need to do a little more education. So as a fire inspector, especially, when I go into someone's home, I ask them, what do they know about carbon monoxide? And they, usually you get the same response, is that it's, well, I know you can't, I know it's a silent killer, because that's the message. It's a silent killer.
That's what's been in my head as you've been talking about this.
And it'll give you flu-like symptoms.
Right.
So there's a chance to do some education. So I say to them, so when your smoke alarm goes off, and you walk into a room and you see a slight haze and it smells like burnt toast, and you realize that you put toast in the toaster, you know that, okay, I can see the smoke, I can smell it, I can maybe even sometimes taste it. Therefore, I know that this is a false alarm and I don't need to have to call the fire department.
Right.
Carbon monoxide is much different. Your carbon monoxide alarm goes off, you can't see it, you can't smell it, and you can't taste it. Now, carbon monoxide, I want to say, I might be wrong, but I want to say it is very, very slightly lighter than air.
Okay. So it rises?
So very, very slightly. But with humidity in the home and air currents, it will be everywhere.
Okay.
So if you have carbon monoxide on the floor, it will also be up at the ceiling. If there's carbon monoxide in the basement, it will also be upstairs. So a smoke alarm typically you put it on the ceiling for best protection.
Right.
A carbon monoxide alarm, some of the carbon monoxide alarms are plug-ins, so you can put it in the outlet on the, where you would plug in your vacuum cleaner or light. So you can put a carbon monoxide anywhere in the home. So with the combination carbon monoxide alarm and smoke alarm, they're mounted normally on the ceiling. So you can put it anywhere.
Right.
So since you can't see it, smell it, or taste it, the only real way that you can tell whether you have carbon monoxide in the home is to call the fire department, and then we would come with our meters and we would test it, and then advise you of the outcome from there. So trust your carbon monoxide alarm, trust your smoke alarms, but especially with carbon monoxide, if you're uncertain, and even with a smoke alarm, if you're uncertain as to why it's going off, we're here 24 hours a day. Call us. That's what we're here for.
Sounds great.
And I've actually had the personal experience when my kids were younger, our carbon monoxide alarm went off, and as embarrassing it is, and I work for the fire department, I called the fire department, and there was no CO issue, but it goes back to Rick. If your alarm's going off, you make sure you call 911.
I would much rather have a professional with a gas meter come in and say, "Oh, yeah, no, that was a false alarm. You're good." Than the risks of CO poisoning are just very terrible.
Well, and what we do as a suppression crew. So if I was to go in as a fire suppression, one of the pumpers shows up and we have our gas meter showing that there is carbon monoxide in the home. You mentioned, Autumn, you'd rather have the experts come in. So what we would do, or what I would do in a case like that, is all I know is that I've got carbon monoxide in the home. Then I would call the local utility company to attend, and then they have additional equipment that they can actually pinpoint which appliance is the appliance that is the culprit, and we go from there. So
that's fantastic.
The experts are there, and we rely on the experts as well.
It's a whole chain of expertise helping to keep you safe if you listen to the alarm and keep it up to date.
Correct.
So if you're out there, if you've got a house that's approaching 10 years old or sort of in that 8 to 10 range, you may get a postcard from KFR, and highly recommend you follow up on it.
And sorry, just to add on that, as part of, there'll be a QR code on it, which will lead to our, it's above and beyond, but it's a home kind of safety checklist, right? So it takes just a little bit further, but we're hoping people.
It's just a quick little guide, right? It helps you sort of walk through your house and where are some risks that you might not have been aware of, and a little bit less formal than a fire inspection.
It just takes it a little bit further, and of course our contact information is on that postcard, and if anybody has any questions, obviously we can stop by their house, or they can, whatever they need, just to make sure that they're safe from fire.
Check your alarms, check your mailbox. So I just want to wrap this up with Fire Prevention Week coming up in October. Any sort of plans for it? Anything happening, exciting?
We're hoping to kind of kick it off on October 5th at our training grounds, just a community event, kind of some tour of our training grounds, fire truck rides. I know there'll be bouncy castles there. Some games, hopefully maybe some face painting, some giveaways and stuff like that. We'll have an event at City Hall that we're just organizing, just to kind of promote some more public education. We're trying to, because what the theme, ironically, is smoke alarms this year, right?
It's well timed.
So we're hoping to be out at maybe some hardware stores out out in the community, the fire inspectors and firefighter, and just try to share some more information about smoke alarms and.
Fantastic. And details about those events will start rolling out in the next little bit, I'm sure. Any parting thoughts as I've got you here?
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to kind of discuss fires and what we do in the community. And like we said, a lot of fires are preventable, and we see it firsthand with us doing fire investigations and the importance of having working smoke and CO alarms, because that's what we see too when we do our investigations and we interview the homeowners, that they're like, I heard that smoke alarm go off, and we exited the building and we called 911. They had that home escape plan, right, in place. So thanks for giving us the opportunity to kind of share information with you. And
thank you for having us.
All right. Well, we've all got a lot going on in our lives, but fire prevention, it's one of those things that's really worth prioritizing. It might save your life. So start with the object that you might take for granted in your own home, your smoke alarm, your carbon monoxide alarm, and make sure that they are up to date. As always, if you have topics for the show, please reach out to podcasts@cityofkingston.ca. We'll be back with more, but until then, you can check out our backlogs wherever you get podcasts from. Tell Me More is a production of the City of Kingston podcast, produced by the City of Kingston's Communications and Public Engagement team. Thank you all.